Welcome to the Runners World podcast with me, Rick Pearson.
And me, Ben Hobson.
This week, we're casting an eye on the upcoming world champs in the company of none other than Steve Cram.
The Jarrow Arrow.
The Jarrow Arrow, a bona fide legend of athletics, no less.
Absolutely, like top tier national treasure. To steal a phrase from a very other popular food-based podcast. National treasure.
National treasure, yeah.
So yeah, it's been and it's a great chat. Steve's ever the professional, and it's like dipping the bucket into an enormous well of knowledge. When you ask him anything about it, it's fantastic. And I mean,
so passionate about it still, right? So that's what you want. I'm a bit like, he still loves athletics, and he really comes across, which is what you want.
Yeah, and it gets me. I'm excited now. I was excited before, but now, like, you have a little chat with Steve, and
oh, for sure,
you feel much more sort of buoyed up by what's coming and the weekend and how everyone can tune in. So, yeah, I mean, without further ado, I think we should just talk to Steve Cram.
Guest of the week, here in the studio. Guest of the week, sometimes on the phone. Could be an athlete, could be a physio, or a complete unknown.
So Steve, welcome to the Runners World podcast. Great to have you on. It's great to have a bona fide legend of track and field with us. So thank you for your time. With the World Champs coming up, how do you think these will go for Team GB? Who are we looking out for? Who are some of the stars that people should be aware of?
Yeah, it isn't going to be easy. It's the year before the Olympics, but we've had this weird period where we got out of sync, and obviously last year we had a World Champs as well, which actually went better than I thought many thought they would. We did get Jake winning his gold medal, which was brilliant, and we did, I think, better than most expected. I think this time round it's going to be as tough. I think we'll pick up, I hope, 5 or 6 if it goes really well. Getting a gold medal looks a bit of a challenge. But I think there are people like Keeley, Darnell Hughes. I mean, Dina's starting to run well again. We always have a chance in the 2 4x1s. The lads in the 1500 are thereabouts. That's a race where anybody could pick up a medal, perhaps. And then there is always 1 or 2 other kind of surprises and things that tend to, maybe you don't see them coming, but KJT in the heptathlon as well. So, we've got some of our established stars who are right in the mix. Laura Muir, so there are, I don't know, you could probably make a case for 8 or 9 chances and hope you convert 5 or 6 with a bit of luck.
It's been a pretty promising season so far. I mean, like we talked about Keeley's performance in Paris recently. That was like an emphatic victory. And I sort of, I think that lots of people are running quite well. So I've got pretty good hopes. I'm just going to put it, I'm pretty confident. But it is. Do you think that we're currently in a sort of like a peak of sort of British talent coming through? Is it at peaks and troughs? How do you think the system's working out at the moment?
I think there's always, in any period, there's always new people coming through. You've got some of your people who've been around quite a long time, others who've, now perhaps not going to be in the mix anymore. You always have that situation. I mean, I think there are some areas where we should be doing better. I know there's been a lot of talk around the team that's been selected and the size of the team, but it's basically that size because people haven't made the qualifying marks. And the qualifying marks, particularly in the field events, we've perhaps struggled to find, in the men's event, long jumpers, triple jumpers, javelin throwers. So there are some areas where we are. It's not that we're missing a bunch of people. We don't have even anybody. We don't even have 1 or 2 people who are hitting the mark there. So that's probably a bit of concern. I think generally speaking, though, that we are doing what we always do. We've got people coming through. You only have to look at our performances at the recent European under-20s. There are athletes bubbling under the surface of those who are currently around right now who may think they've got an outside chance to get the Olympics next year, or perhaps the Worlds in 2 years' time. So I'm pretty. There's a lot going on. We've got some great. My area, middle distance, has been great for a while. Continues to be so on the men's and the women's side. So no, I think all in all, probably, we're missing, the Mo Farah thing. Mo goes, and then 5 and 10,000, we suddenly look bereft of going there. Eilish is obviously injured, and she's done brilliantly in the last year or two. But so yeah, there are gaps, 100%. But that somebody's probably going to come through and fill that gap. But at the moment, I think it's winning the gold medals that looks tough. I think as I said, we'll pick up some medals, but who are the people who are going to go and win gold medals this year, next year?
Steve, as someone who's triumphed at a World Champs, what do you think is the key to getting the most out of yourself on the biggest of stages? And maybe that could even apply to people who are never going to run at the World Champs, but are going to have big races that are important to them.
Well, I think one of the issues I often had, and as a coach, I tried to put this into place because it was what I had. I think you genuinely have to plan your season, and it's a challenge these days for people because a lot of them aren't really making much of a living, and opportunities to go and pick up races, whether it's Diamond League or Continental Tour or levels below that, where you think, oh, I've got a chance to go and run here or there or compete there, and it wasn't in the plan initially, but you think I'll go and do it. You have to really focus on if it's the Worlds or the Europeans or the Junior Championships or whatever it is, has to be your goal for the season. You can have a bit of fun afterwards, but you have to put that in. What do I have to do to get there? How do I get selected? Do I have to be at the trials? What do I have to do at the trials? And those become the pillars of what the rest of your season should be built around. Do I do an indoor season, or do I do a cross-country season? So you work back from that goal. And I think if you speak to all of the coaches, their job is to get their athlete physically as well prepared at the right time, the middle of August, or is it the end of July, or is it the end of August, or whatever it might be. But then it's about the athlete having to accept if you're in good shape, or maybe you're just not quite in good shape, but can you go and raise your game? Can you go to the championships and produce the best performance? Not something you did back in May that nobody's going to remember. I always get frustrated for athletes whose season's best was done in the first 3 meetings of the year. And what's the point in that? So it's nice that everyone wants to do a season's best or a personal best, but do it when it matters. That's it's a skill. But it happens in all sport. Golfers, tennis players, when it matters, can you produce the best shot? We've had a great summer of cricket. I'm a big cricket fan. The big guys produce the big moments. On the right stage. So and that's why the top people, whether it's Mondo Duplantis or Noah Lyles or Carson Varholm, they thrive on being on stage. They thrive on that environment, and that's what you're looking for.
You mentioned the slightly tricky cycle that we've got in at the moment following Tokyo and World Champs last year, and now these. How important are these events like the World Champs this year, do you think, is a proving ground for Paris? And do you think that it's actually going to be a sort of slight conflict of interest in terms of this sort of how people build up for the World Champs and then sort of carry on and through? Well,
again, I think there are one or two people who kind of are saying they're getting ready for Paris and maybe, didn't want to take any risks here. Sydney, for instance, or, Kip Limo's just had getting his Achilles, his hamstring. Others, who was reading, having an Achilles operation. Sometimes people go, I don't want to run the risk of next year being put in jeopardy. I'll be honest, though, I think most athletes, once they're in this cycle now, you go to the World Championships and they will give it their all. There's none of this, maybe afterwards they'll justify performances based on,
Yeah.
Well, I was quite happy with that. It's a great
fifth sign.
And all of that sort of thing. But I think when they're in the moment, when they're there, that's what they're wrapped up in. Yes, but there will be athletes who come to these championships and will perform at a level that they suddenly think, I've got a chance next year. I'm in the mix now, and I've done something. Maybe they finish fourth, maybe they come third, maybe they come sixth, but they'll take it away and go, right, I'm on that trajectory. That means that next year I can be really contending for medals. So, and I think that's always interesting, watching out for those people, particularly a year before, these champs that are a year before the Olympics.
Do you think there's ever a case, Steve, for an athlete who would be better off prioritising something like the World or Europeans because possibly they're not going to win an Olympic medal? A little bit like, how a team in football can be a cup team. If you're like, you're not going to win the Premier League, but you might win the League Cup. Is there any kind of comparison there, do you think?
Don't think so. I mean, I think there are obviously people who can do very well at European level, and just because of the nature of their event, they may not even be in the top 8 or 9 at a world level. And then there are others who, if you're winning it in Europe, it used to be the case, for instance, in 1500 in our day. To be the best in Europe, you pretty much have to be the best in the world. And there's a lot of field events that are like that. Whereas, for some people, I think if you're a world contender, you're an Olympic contender. I think that goes without saying. I don't think, but I think it is interesting how people pick and choose where they're going to compete. There's a lot of shifts been going on, which maybe we won't have time to get into. But things like the world rankings are now a big factor in athletes' lives. Both in terms of how they get invites to diamond leagues, which is their bread and butter, and how they're earning money. But it also now has an impact on it's a way into a championships, Olympics or worlds that wasn't there before if things haven't gone so well. So you could see athletes picking meets in this season that's not around the championships that are purely based on them getting the right ranking points. And I see that happening. I do see that happening, where people are picking and choosing where can I get a better score in the meets that are kicking around Europe that allow me to improve my world ranking.
Do you think things like that, and having to choose how they compete, and then world rankings, and say what happened with UK athletics and the selection that you mentioned earlier, do you think it's making it possibly too hard for athletes to kind of compete without there being a lot of extra stress, or is it just part and part of the game? Like if you want to run, you've got to do these things.
Yeah, you all athletes grow up in whatever environment is around them at the time, and they have to learn to adapt to that. I think it's, in some respects, it's almost now a little bit like it was when I was literally first starting, when I was a teenager. There didn't seem to be a lot of money around. And I think for most of the athletes now, but there's a lot of examples. We have all these continental tour races. And again, I don't want to get into this too much, but, people are jumping on airplanes to go to little meets in Italy or Switzerland or wherever in order to get a performance in a world ranking point, and they're paying their own way. They've got to pay their own flights, they've got to pay their hotel. If they do well, they maybe get a bit of prize money back, but they're backing themselves financially to go and compete at a slightly higher level, or what they think might be a slightly higher level. Now that's not really sustainable, I don't think, for many athletes over a period of time. And that's a problem for the sport. A lot of these meets that have world continental tour status have no budget. They want international athletes there, and that's how they get their status as a bronze or a gold or a silver or gold or even a challenger. But actually, they have no way of funding this. So the athletes are the ones who are funding it. So there is an issue around the competition structure. And I think going back to what you're asking, really, it's about, how do you use that? How do athletes, I think they are doing that. I think they're thinking, how do I get the best world ranking position, for instance? Is that going to help me then get invites to better races? So how do I improve that? And yes, I might have to invest in my own competition program for the year and go and take a chance. Get on a plane, go to Switzerland for a meet. And hey, if the weather's bad, then you have to find another one next week and do something. Do you know what I mean? So it's not easy. It's really not easy. I don't envy the athletes at the moment. So that's something which they and their agents and their managers, but probably more their coaches really have to contend with.
Are some countries better than others with that, Steve? Like, is the US better funded in that area? Do athletes have to jump through the same hoops there? It's
a different system. We've had lottery funding in the UK, which has been a massive benefit to all of our Olympic sports, including athletics. But America, the collegiate system is the proving ground, and the collegiate system is very supportive, but it's also quite destructive. You've got to compete a lot, but the people who come through that, and it's much better than it used to be. And then in America, they then have a lot of clubs, as you know. So basically, then it's about a shoe contract, and it's can you get into the what one of the professional clubs. If not, then it's a struggle for them as well. There are for them getting on an airplane and come to Europe, which has been the traditional hotbed of athletics, which is why sometimes we only see certain Americans and not others that you look on world ranking lists and go, well, that person, I haven't really heard of them, but we haven't seen them in Europe at all. And it's just because they haven't yet made that step to start doing that. So it's, we're getting in quite deep here into kind of the structure of the competition. But it's interesting, Seb Coe has been talking a lot, and he has done ever since he's took office a few years back, about trying to get this year-round competition structure that's both on television and sponsors. The problem is it's too thinly spread at the moment, and there isn't enough money to sustain that. So, but hopefully that'll change.
Right, let's bring it back to the World Championships. Who outside of GB and everything, just within the event, who are you most excited about watching race? Is Ingebrigtsen just absolutely going to dominate it? What races are you most looking forward to?
Yeah, well, I think the two names that have dominated this Diamond League season so far have been Ingebrigtsen and Faith Kipyegon, and they're both tried the 1500, 5000 double. So I'm really looking forward to. I think Faith's probably got a better chance. I shouldn't say that. Jacob will hit me if he heard me say that. He is an outstanding competitor. He's a brilliant athlete, of course he is, but he's an incredible competitor. So I'll be really interested to see in the 5,000. He's got to get through the 1,500, and that's going to be tough. Really high standard in the 1,500. But he learned from last year, and I think he's better this year, if anything. And then the 5,000. If it was a 3,000, I'd back him 100% every time. But there's always a chance that somebody can go hard enough. If he's had 3 tough races in the 1,500. And that's what he bases his training on. He knows how strong he needs to be. Faith has moved into that world now, where Faith has embraced this endurance part of her, which was always there, but she's been an out-and-out 1,500 meter runner. But has now, over the last 18 months, been working on higher mileage, higher tempo, better tempo, and has really brought that, as we saw, to great effect at the longer distance as well. So I struggle to see how you beat Faith Kipyegon. I think on the men's race, though, it's a pity that Kip Lemo's not there, but there's enough guys running really well this year that could put him under enough pressure. But I'm still thinking we could see 2 double golds there.
And what's the way to beat him, Steve? To make the 5,000 quick from the start? Would that be the best?
I think that's the only option they have. Yeah, they've got to hurt him early, and that's got to be a sustained pressure. And he will hang on and hang on. Of course he will. He's very strong. But if they turn it into a 2,000 meter race, even a 3,000 meter race, then makes it easy for him.
Can I ask you very quickly about the distinction between being a great runner and being a great competitor? Because I think that's interesting, and I'm sure that both are very important. But what do you mean by what we're looking for when someone's a great competitor? What do you mean?
Well, I think even when he's not at his best, when he, or also, he does the toughest type of distance running. Everybody knows what he's going to do. And when everybody knows that, you have to have supreme confidence in your ability to go to the front, whether it's 600 out or 500 out or 400 out or whatever it is, and know that I'm not going to no one's going to get past me here. You have to go hard enough that you're putting the others under pressure, not too hard, so that you've still got something left in the home straight. So he has an inordinate amount of self-confidence, which can be misplaced in other people. So what I mean by that is, I hear people go, I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that, Noah Lyles is very self-confident as well. Noah's come out. I don't know why he's done this, but he's gone. What has he said? He's going to run 19.1 and 9.65 or something. I really hope he does, because I'll enjoy watching him do it. Whereas Ingebrigtsen just says, "I'm going to win." Okay, he doesn't tell us the time or anything like that. Now, I love the fact though that he embraces that. I know how much I've talked to him a lot over the years. And probably very different to his brothers as well. And maybe he was, because he was the youngest. He just sucked up all of that. Right, I'll show you. And so I think, when I see he's a great competitor, he absolutely loves putting himself to the test. He loves going, what can I do here? I don't want the other guys to beat me, but what can I do? How can I run better? How can I make myself run better?
I think it's the theatre he brings to it. Like, if we're going to say like runner and competitor, like runner to me is obviously someone who's just naturally talented, which obviously these guys are, and they can all show up and do the training and all that sort of stuff. But then the competitor is it's the bolts, it's the people like that. It's the kind of guys who have the, as you say, self-confidence and the sort of the bit of razzmatazz that they can bring to the whole event, and that's it's great to see.
Yeah, he thrives. What I mean by he thrives on that environment. There are runners who are good enough to go and run away from the field, and that's great. They're brilliant athletes, great runners. But he actually thrives on, well, you try and come past me then. Let's see what you can do. What have you got? He loves that. And actually he's almost more, he's more of a challenge when he's not the favourite and everyone's looking at him. When there's a little bit of, wonder if he can. We're talking a lot about him here, but he's a massive draw for the sport. He's brilliant. Yeah.
Well, I think it goes back to what you're saying about like Mo, and the moment now Mo leaves and there's that void, and it's the characters that fill that void, and he's one of them, certainly. And I think if you want people to be drawn into the sport, it is these sort of these figureheads, these show people of athletics that will draw people in. And that's, if no one's ever watched a race and they sit there and they go, who's the guy with the slick back hair and the tattoos who's really fast? You know what I mean? Like that's what draws people in.
It does, and you probably couldn't find two more different personalities than Femke Bol and Ingebrigtsen. However, they're both quite similar deep down. You would never think it of Femke, but she's a fierce competitor, but never shows it. Never. She's the sweetest, loveliest person. Everybody loves her on the circuit. Has incredible abilities. Always smiling. Is always asking about other people, doing all of those things, which is great. But deep down, she wants to be the best. She wants to do it. So they're completely different. They'll attract different people to the sport. Not everybody likes Ingebrigtsen. Everybody likes Femke, but yeah, you know what I mean? We need that balance. We need those different personalities, yeah.
As well as kind of celebrating those personalities, Steve, what more do you think can be done in terms of getting fans engaged in the sport? Is it the way that we show it on TV? Is it more storytelling, different formats? Have you got any ideas around that?
Oh man, we travel around all year doing this when we're on planes and trains and sitting in. There are a couple of the kind of documentary style fly on the wall which are being done at the moment. Noah's doing one. There's one being done around the Diamond League circuit, which will start next, I think, in the autumn, leading into the Olympics next year. All of these things, that's what other sports are doing. We've done a lot around, the thing with athletics is, unlike a lot of sports, a 2-hour Diamond League, we are parading, and I think this is a little bit of an issue. We're parading so many people in front of you in 2 hours, and our big stars get a minute or a couple of minutes, and that's it. You go to a golf tournament or a tennis tournament or even a football match. You've got, and even though a footballer might be in and out of the match, he's on your screen for 90 minutes or best part a couple of hours. So whereas a 100-meter runner, we're going to go to the 100 meters. There's going to be a caption. There's going to be a lineup. I get 10 seconds to talk about Fred Kerr or whoever it might be. The race goes. That takes 10 seconds. 2-3 replays, result caption, and that's it. And that is the nature of athletics, because we've got the 400-meter hurdles coming up next, or we're going to the shot put, or actually the javelin's ongoing, and it's, which actually suits the modern world. The modern world likes fast-moving things, and people want to see it, but it hinders our ability to draw in an audience, to get to know a personality or a person and get to like them. So we always laugh because the field eventers always complain that they're not, and we go, no, you are on air way more. If you're a good field eventer, if you're Duplantis or you're Sam Kendricks, or your Mahuchik in the high jump, or I don't know, Jazz Sawyers in the long jump, or whatever. We're going to see you 5 or 6 times, and you're going to get a couple of minutes, just you, every time we see you. So it's the mechanics of it are such that it's sometimes hard to think, how do we change that? How do we draw people in a little bit more? But I think athletics. I think athletics gets a rough ride. Not a rough ride. We've Athletics has been a sport for a long, long time, which has had real equality around men and women. They do the same events. They get the same prize money. You still can't say that about most sports. Some of our biggest stars are our female stars. Certainly, you look in the UK, Paula Radcliffe and Jess Ennis, and Denise Lewis or Kelly Holmes, or you can reel them off. And yes, they sit with Mo Farah, but there's no kind of hierarchy that says one's better than the other. So, and we're a proper world sport in the sense that anybody can win from small countries that don't have to have a massive system or anything. You can still be the world's best 100-meter runner if you're from, I don't know, whether you're from South Africa or whether you're from the UK or Trinidad or whatever it might be. And I think that's not recognised enough, and it might actually be a detriment to this to getting more exposure. I don't know why it shouldn't be, but it gets ignored. That frustrates me on behalf of the sport. I think it should be applauded more for the platform that it has. And by the way, you don't need to be wealthy to take part in it.
What then, Steve, as someone who's done both, what's more stressful, competing or commentating?
Competing easy, yeah. Unless it's tech stuff, then it gets in the way. I love commentating. It's always the second best to competing, but it's a very good second best. And it's been so long now, I've almost forgotten what it was like to compete. But yeah, look, to sit in a stadium and watch the world's best athletes and get to talk about them on a regular basis, it's a real privilege in that sense. I've seen some fantastic stuff over the years and hopefully continue to do so. I still love athletics, as you can probably tell. There are things that frustrate me about the sport, but I still love actually even going to smaller meets as well that I'm not commentating on. I can't help it. I mumble to myself probably when that's happening, but yeah. No, I love it. I genuinely love it. I mean, commentating's it's funny, isn't it? Everyone thinks you have a career and then you move into the media, and particularly commentary. I think it's not as natural a move as people think it might be.
I mean, otherwise every athlete would be doing it, right? Like, I think
yeah. I mean, obviously there aren't that always opportunities, but even so, a 1500 meter runner like myself, I probably didn't watch that much of the pole vault back in the day.
Yeah, right.
So you forget how complicated our sport can be, but as I said, you also try to, television broadcasting has its own techniques that you have to learn and develop, and not everybody's able to do that. So, yeah.
What would be your commentating highlight, Steve? If you had to pick one out, would it be from 2012?
Oh, do you know, I was asked this on a separate thing recently. I think there are a whole bunch. I mean, 2012 was great because it was in an environment which we'd all were I don't know. It wasn't that we dreamt of it, but it was you knew it was a once in a lifetime thing, really. And the noise. I mean, particularly Mo Farah. That first Saturday was amazing, but the to be there at that time was very special. I don't know. I mean, I've had so many great. I mean, I was asked what was the greatest thing I've witnessed, and I actually said Bolt in 2009. And the reason I said that was because it was, when you see things that are genuinely jaw dropping. I mean, some things are just exciting, and when you see something that you go, wow, I might not see that again ever. Now we haven't yet. We might do, but when he ran his 100 and 200 double there was just amazing. To be fair, I threw Paula in there in 2015. Yeah, sorry, I said 2015, 2003. She ran 2:15. You're watching it, and that's a more drawn out thing. It's 2 hours where you're suddenly going, what is going on here? She is running something that it could be and and it was a long time before anyone even got close to it. So when you see something in athletics that it's not quite the same as seeing the pole vault record go up by a centimeter each time. Do you know what I mean? It's you see something, you just go, whoa. And that still gets me really excited. We had a couple of them this year, to be honest. Kip Yeager, Ingebrigtsen's 2 mile. That was like, what? Yeah. Anyway,
Amazing. Yeah. Well, hopefully we'll see some more as well with the world champs. Yeah, hopefully.
I think we will. I think it'll be a good world champs. Budapest is a fabulous city. I have a lot of love for Budapest. It's a great new stadium. Very fast, apparently. So yeah.
I mean, and actually, it's a good way to sort of talking about fast tracks and development of things and how the sport's changing, because this is we're retrospectively looking back 40 years now, Steve, on your gold and that inaugural World Championships. Runners World is 30 this year, so it's a year of anniversaries.
Happy birthday.
How do you think the sports? How do you think running and how do you think the sport has changed so much? I mean, I mentioned tracks and how super shoes and all that sort of stuff's made a huge difference to performance. But what are the biggest things you've noticed?
Do you know what I'd say? I don't think the sport has changed that much. I think the world has changed, as you would expect in 40 years. Look, to be a great 1500 meter runner, you've still got to do all the training and hard work and believe in yourself and have a good coach and have a good setup. I don't think Jake Whiteman has been doing anything much different to what I was doing 4 years ago. So I think the basics are still the same. Yes, I would have loved to have had more chance to go altitude. I would have lived at altitude if I knew what they know now. Yes, it would have been nice to have all the medical and science backup that the guys have. So you've got all these nice bonuses. And yes, of course, the shoes at the minute would be great fun. But I think the basics are still the same. The basics are the same. And the athletics still is about, who am I quicker than you? Can I beat you? Can I throw further than you? Can I jump further than you? And yes, you measured against what's gone before. That's always happened. But how people, I think there's a lot more knowledge, but that happens in anything, isn't it? So technique but as a person, could I be an athlete today? Yes. Could the good athletes who are athletes today, could they have done it 40 years ago? Yes. So there's nothing that you kind of go, there's no way they would have been good back then. So, but the world is a different place. But you've just got so many more. And what I mean by that as well is, I think the biggest barrier, particularly in our country, perhaps, to people becoming top class athletes, is just what's going on for young people in their world, and there are less opportunities. I think the biggest change, the biggest issue really is, all the athletic clubs that were thriving back in my day, the opportunities to compete on a regular basis in loads of different things against pretty good people. I didn't have to leave the Northeast to be competing against very, very high level, even when I was 14 or 16 or 17, I was competing against internationals on a regular basis just in the northeast of England. You don't really have that now. You don't have that depth, if you like. So probably, even though I said you could succeed, it probably is harder. Not when you get to it, but it is harder just to get the right people involved and then to find out if any of them have got any ability or talent. And I'd probably say, particularly in the field events, schools just don't do athletics in the way they used to.
That's great, Steve. Thanks so much for your time coming on the Runners World podcast, talking about the World Championship, your own career, and we're hoping that it's going to be an absolute celebration and spectacular celebration of athletics. And we thank you again for coming on.
It's been great fun, and I think it'll be great champs. And you won't miss it on the BBC. By the way, there's loads of we're on BBC One.
That red button.
So I think we're on network for an awful lot as well. So absolutely, you won't miss it.
iPlayer.
It's always available on the iPlayer. Yeah, but I think, as I said, just you won't miss anything. And actually, the program, what I mean by that, the schedule is very helpful as well. And unlike the championships last year, which were in the middle of the night for real athletic fans, you can sit down all those evenings from Saturday onwards and hopefully see some medals for Great Britain as well.
Thanks, Steve. Thanks again for your time. Great to have you on.
Hi, guys. Take care. Thank you.
So that brings us to the end of this week's Runners World podcast. A huge thanks to our special guest, Steve Cram, and to you, of course, for listening.
You can subscribe to free issues of Runners World for just £5. Head to runnersworld.com/UK/podcast offer to get this exclusive listener offer. Please do subscribe to the podcast. It's very easy. Wherever you're listening to it, just find the little button that says subscribe, and then you won't miss a single episode. Thank you very much for listening, and you'll hear from us next week.